Hello friends. If a letter just landed in your mailbox from Social Security telling you that you were overpaid, there is one number inside that letter that most people never even notice, and it is the number that decides whether you lose half your check starting next month or none of it at all. Today I'm going to show you exactly where that number is hiding, why the rules around it changed dramatically in the last 2 years, and what you need to do in the next several days, not months, to protect your income. Before we go further, subscribe to this channel and turn on the bell. This is the kind of letter that arrives without warning, uses language designed to sound final when it is not, and quietly starts taking money out of your check before you even understand what happened. Subscribe now and let's get into it. Here is what almost nobody tells you about an overpayment notice. It is not a bill. It is not a court order. It is a proposal, and the word proposal matters more than anything else on that page. Social Security is required by law to tell you before they take a single dollar back from you, and that requirement exists precisely because these notices are wrong far more often than people assume. Administrative errors on the agency's own side, delays in updating income reports, outdated marital status records, and misapplied rules around working while receiving benefits, all of these generate overpayment notices for people who did absolutely nothing wrong. And yet the design of the letter, with its official seal and its specific dollar figure, makes it feel like a debt you already owe. That feeling is exactly what causes people to make the first mistake, which is responding too quickly in the wrong way or not responding at all. Let's talk about what actually happens the moment that letter is postmarked, because the math changed significantly depending on when you received it. If your notice arrived after a certain point in 2025, the default withholding rate the agency will apply to your monthly check is 50%, not 10%, which was the rule for a period before that, and not 100%, which was the rule even earlier and which strip people of their entire monthly income overnight. 50% taken directly from a Social Security retirement, survivor, or disability check, starting automatically unless you act. For someone receiving $2,000 a month, that is $1,000 gone, starting the month the withholding begins, continuing every single month until the agency considers the overpayment fully recovered. If you receive supplemental security income instead, the number is different. SSI withholding remains capped at 10%, a detail that matters enormously if you are trying to figure out which set of rules applies to your specific letter. Now, here is the number inside that letter that most people scroll right past. It is the date the notice was issued, and from that date, you have a window, and inside that window, there are two different clocks running at the same time, not one. The first clock gives you 30 days. If you act within those 30 days by filing the right form, the withholding at 50% does not start while your case is being reviewed. Miss that window and the money starts coming out of your check automatically while everything else you do afterward is essentially playing catch up. The second clock gives you 90 days total, and inside that 90 days, you have 3 distinct paths available to you, and choosing the wrong one or choosing none of them is what turns a fixable situation into a financial emergency. The first path is requesting reconsideration, and this is the one to use when you believe the overpayment itself is wrong, either in the amount stated or in the claim that an overpayment happened at all. Maybe your income was reported correctly and the agency simply processed it incorrectly on their end. Maybe a marital status change was recorded with the wrong effective date. Reconsideration challenges the existence or the size of the debt itself, and if you win, the number resets to 0. The second path is requesting a waiver, and this is fundamentally different from reconsideration because here you are not arguing that the overpayment is wrong. You are acknowledging that it happened, but arguing that it was not your fault and that repaying it would cause you real financial hardship, meaning it would interfere with your ability to afford housing, food, or medical care. Both conditions have to be true at the same time for a waiver to be approved, not just one of them. The third path is requesting a lower withholding rate, which is the option for people who accept that the overpayment is real and that repayment is fair, but who simply cannot survive on half of their monthly check while it gets repaid. This uses a specific form, and it asks the agency to take a smaller percentage each month, stretching the repayment out over a longer period instead of cutting your income in half overnight. The mistake almost everyone makes is trying to solve this over the phone, and it is worth understanding exactly why that backfires. When you call the general Social Security number and explain that you received an overpayment notice, the representative on the other end can confirm the amount, confirm the withholding date, and tell you your rights. What they cannot do is create a paper trail that protects you if the case goes sideways later. A verbal conversation, no matter how reassuring it sounds in the moment, does not stop the 90-day clock, does not stop the 50% withholding from beginning on schedule, and leaves you with nothing to point to later if you are asked to prove that you responded in time. The only thing that stops that clock is a written request submitted through the correct form and either mailed with a tracking number or submitted in person at a local office with a stamped, dated receipt in your hand before you leave the building. If you take away nothing else from this video, take away this: paper stops the clock, phone calls do not. Let's walk through exactly how to figure out which of the three paths applies to your specific situation, because choosing correctly the first time saves you months of delay. Start by rereading the notice itself and looking for the stated reason for the overpayment. If the letter cites a change in your income, your living situation, or your marital status that you know for a fact was reported correctly and on time, your path is reconsideration, because the agency's own error is likely the source of the mistake. If you read the notice and think this is probably accurate, I did receive more than I should have, but I genuinely did not realize it was happening and I cannot afford to pay it back without missing rent or a medical bill, your path is a waiver. This is where honesty about your financial situation actually helps you, not hurts you, because the waiver process is built around documenting hardship, not hiding it. And if you read the notice and think this is accurate, I understand why it happened, and I could technically afford to repay it, but not at 50% of my check every month, your path is requesting a reduced withholding rate using Form SA-634, which lets you propose a specific dollar amount you can actually manage. Here is a detail that catches people off guard almost every time, and it involves what happens the moment you submit any of these three requests within the first 30 days. So if you file a reconsideration, a waiver request, or a lower withholding request within 30 days of the date on the notice, and you do it in writing, Social Security is generally required to pause the withholding while your request is under review. That means your check keeps arriving at its normal amount while your case sits in the queue being evaluated. This single rule is the entire reason the 30-day window matters so much more than the 90-day window. 90 days is your deadline to preserve your right to appeal at all. 30 days is your deadline to keep your income intact while that appeal happens. Confusing these two numbers is the single most common and most costly mistake people make when they receive this letter, because plenty of people file within the 90 days correctly and are still shocked when 50% of their check disappears the following month simply because they filed on day 45 instead of day 25. Now let's talk about what documentation actually strengthens each of these three requests, because a bare form with no supporting evidence moves slower and succeeds less often than one with the right paperwork attached. For a reconsideration request, gather anything that proves your income or status was reported accurately and on time: pay stubs, employer verification letters, marriage or divorce records, anything with a clear date on it that contradicts the agency's stated reason for the overpayment. For a waiver request, you need two things working together: proof that the overpayment was not your fault, which might mean showing that you reported a change and the agency simply failed to act on it, and proof of financial hardship, which typically means recent bank statements, a list of monthly expenses, and documentation of fixed costs like rent, mortgage, or medical bills that would be jeopardized by a 50% reduction in income. For a reduced withholding rate request, bring the same hardship documentation along with a specific proposed dollar amount, not just a request to pay less, because a concrete number gives the reviewer something to approve quickly rather than something to negotiate.